Yep. It's still January. And with that in mind, I was thinking that maybe this would be a good time to have a look at some of the books I have got lined up to read this year. Now, I'm not a fast reader, I've said this before. I like to read slowly, I like to get the most out of every book I read. I like to give credit to the author by actually really properly reading the beautiful words and phrases. So I've got 2 shelves of books that are on my TBR list. Whether I will get through them in a year is debatable, and I will get through as and when I do. I read to enjoy. Also, I have this little foible of liking to read books set in the season in which I'm reading them. Obviously, some books are not necessarily set in any particular season, but sometimes once summer has gone, for example, if I pick up a book that is definitely a summer read, I will put it away for the following year. It's just one of those little personal things of mine. It's just daft, I know, but there we are. So I may not get through every book that I mention in this video, but I will get round to them sooner or later. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a look at some of the books that I'm really looking forward to on my shelves of TBRs, and hopefully I will get to them this year and be reviewing them, and if not, it'll be maybe the following year. Who knows? But let's start with the book I'm currently reading, just very quickly. And that is a historical novel called The Lady of the Ravens. It's by Joanna Hickson, who I have not read before. I am really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through. It's set in the time of King Henry VII, so the very beginning of the Tudor period, quite soon after he had defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth. And this is about one of the women who serve Queen Elizabeth. That's Elizabeth of York, who Henry VII marries around the beginning of the book. I won't go too much into it because I'm going to review it later, but this woman is fascinated by the ravens of the Tower of London. So it's a really interesting book. I'm enjoying it, but I'll be reviewing that later on. So the first book, and I definitely will be reading this next after I've finished that one, is a book by Santa Montefiore. Now, I have read several of her other books. This one is called Secrets of the Lighthouse. It's set in Ireland. I have read her previous books. I've read The Summer House and The Butterfly Box, definitely. I think I might have read The House by the Sea as well. These are favourites for my mother. She bought quite a few of these, which is how I got round to reading them. I suppose you'd call them women's fiction. Some of them are sort of romance. They are nicely written. They are thoughtful. In this one, the main character has got away from London to Ireland, hoping to find a place she can cut off contact with past and family. But she's going to meet the widower, Connor McCausland, whose wife died tragically at the old lighthouse of the title. So that is the premise. It's not usually the type of book I pick up, but Mum left these books in my bookcase, and I just tend to pick them up and say, well, let's see. I do really like her writing, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. Now, I picked this one up because of the picture and the title, The Stone Circle. Ooh, yeah, very exciting. I'm looking forward to reading this one. Don't you find it annoying when they put these stickers on? You can't get them off without... Yeah, they just won't come off. It really annoys me. But anyway, I have not read these before. It's by an author called Ellie Griffith, and they're part of a series of Dr. Ruth Galloway, mysteries. I've not read any of these before. Do let me know if you have read these and what you think. I'm really looking forward to this. Let me just read the premise. Nelson has been receiving anonymous letters and their resemblance to those that marked his first case with forensic archaeologist Dr. Ruth Galloway has left him uneasy. After all, the author of those letters is dead, or are they? Then he gets a call from Ruth. She is digging on the Norfolk salt marsh on the site of the henge, a stone circle, and she has found the bones of a young girl. When the body is identified as that of Margaret Lacey, a 12-year-old who went missing 30 years ago, the police reopen the cold case. So it's a murder mystery. I do like a good murder mystery, and this has got very good reviews from people like Kate Moss, who says Galloway is one of the most engaging characters in modern crime fiction. So that's one I am definitely looking forward to. I haven't read a good murder mystery for ages, so that'll be good. Now, next, as you know, well, some of you may know, one of my favourite classic authors is Charles Dickens. I've read all of his books, including the short stories. And when there's no more to read, I decided, well, okay, let's reread them all, but in chronological order of when they were written. So I have already reread Pickwick Papers and Oliver Twist. And next in that chronological order is Barnaby Rudge. Now, this is one of Charles Dickens' lesser known novels, and it's one of two of his historical novels. The other one, of course, being A Tale of Two Cities. They're both set in the 18th century. Now, I remembered that I really did enjoy this book the first time I read it, which is some time ago. It's set in 1780, and it's set against the backdrop of the Gordon riots, which were the riots instigated by Lord George Gordon against popery. They were called the No Popery riots as well. The themes of the novel are very much looking at prejudice, intolerance, as it says on the back, religious bigotry, nationalistic fervour. Themes very relevant today in many ways, but it has another story thread running through it of an unsolved murder and a romance. It's a really good read. So, I'm always surprised that it's not one of Dickens's books that really is so well known. So I do recommend this one, and I'm looking forward to reading that again. By the way, excuse me if I am still a little croaky. I've still got the very tail end of that cold I had over Christmas and beginning of the year. So I'm sorry if I'm croaking, clearing my throat a lot. I try to edit out all the coughs, etc., but some of them might creep in. My next book is from a writer that I really love, and it's A Week in Paris by Rachel Hoare. Now, Rachel Hoare is a writer that I love because she does historical dual or multi-timeline books, very much in the same vein as another writer I love, Kate Morton. I love them because I tend to write in that vein myself with a lot of my books. Some of you have actually read my books, which I love that. I'm so pleased that some of you are reading my books. You will know that I also write dual and multi-timeline books as well. So I'm very much inspired by both Rachel Hoare and Kate Morton. And this one is the earlier part of the novel is set in Paris in 1937, where Kitty Travers enrolls at the Conservatoire on the banks of the Seine to pursue her dream of becoming a concert pianist. But then war breaks out. 25 years later, Faye Knox, a talented young violinist, visits Paris on tour with her orchestra. She barely knows the city. Why does it feel so familiar? Soon, touches of memory become something stronger, and she realizes her connection with these streets runs deeper than she ever expected. So I love that. So I love that kind of history, mystery type thing. Because, as you know, it's the sort of thing I write too. So that is very much a book I am looking forward to. Now, next is another author that I love. Such a prolific writer. And it's Philippa Gregory, and it's Dawnlands. Now, and this is quite a recent book for me. Usually quite a lot of the books I read are, quite older, but this one was actually published last year. I do tend to pick up Philippa Gregory whenever I see her, but she's actually really difficult to keep up with, because it seems like every time I turn around she's produced another book. She is amazing, considering how much research she does. It's quite extraordinary how many books she's produced. She's mostly well known for her Tudor novels. This one is set in the 17th century during the Stuarts, and it's set against the backdrop of the Monmouth uprising. So let me just read the premise. Ned Ferryman, inspired by news of a rebellion against the Stuart kings, returns from America with his Pokanoket, apologies if I've mispronounced that, servant to join the Duke of Monmouth's uprising against the Roman Catholic King James. Meanwhile, Queen Mary summons her friend Livia to a terrified court. Recklessly, Livia drags her son Matthew and his foster mothers Eleanor and Alice into a plot to save the Queen from Monmouth's invasion. So that sounds like a really exciting book, kind of the last battle between the royalists and the commoners, which took place sometime after the civil wars. Yeah, so Philippa Gregory, I just love her. I think if you love historical fiction, you must read Philippa Gregory, because she really knows her stuff. She's so well researched, and she's a really good writer. So there you go. Another one I'm really looking forward to reading. The next book on my list is one that I actually mentioned in my earlier January book list, and I did say at the time that I haven't actually read it yet, and it is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. It's both funny and really sad. I've had quite a few of you commenting on this, saying it actually can be quite it's depressing but also uplifting. So I get the feeling in reading the reviews on the back, funny, brave and utterly devastating, an outstanding debut about loneliness and the power of a little kindness, unforgettable, brilliant, funny and life-affirming. So it seems to be a real mixture of sad and disturbing perhaps, but also uplifting and life-affirming. I do love books that look at human beings and how they tick and how they behave the way they do. This book was particularly recommended to me by my best friend, who is a counsellor. So she knows obviously a lot about psychology, and she recommended this book. So I think that, and I know it's got really, really good reviews. So I'm looking forward to that. This is fun, isn't it? Next on my list is a book I picked up mainly because of the title. It's history, and it's by Miles Sharp, who is one of our, in the UK, he is one of our comedians and actors, probably not very well known outside of the UK. I always like to pick up books written by celebrities. A lot of them, particularly comedians, I find, write really, really well about people. I mean, books I've read from Graham Norton, Stephen Fry, Richard Osman, of course. They just are very, very good at writing books. And Miles Jupp, he appears a lot on some of our political satire type programmes, such as Have I Got News for You? Or Mock the Week. And this is quite a satirical book from what I can see. The Independent says, Jupp's witty novel has some telling things to say about British hypocrisy and the culture at independent schools, where students generally leave with an innate capacity to be dishonest. So not surprising, it's going to be quite damning. So he's a teacher in a private school. The gentle country life he envisaged has stifled him and left his marriage on the brink. What he needs is a holiday, something to remind him and Helen what life used to be like. But when things don't go to plan and an incident at school begins to weigh heavy on his head, Clive's life starts to unravel in front of him. Yeah, unravelling lies, always a good thing to watch or read. Usually quite good fun. So yeah, that'll be a bit of light relief, I think. Now here's another book that I picked up, this time in a charity shop, because of the cover and the title, and then it's another stone circle, and it's called The Stonehenge Legacy. It's by Sam Christer, a writer I have not come across before. It's a thriller. I do love stories set around ancient stones and things like that. Always fascinating. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about standing stones in a minute. The premise: 8 days before the summer solstice, a man is butchered in a blood-freezing sacrifice on the ancient site of Stonehenge before a congregation of robed worshippers. Within hours, one of the world's foremost treasure hunters has shot himself in his country mansion, and to his estranged son, young archaeologist Gideon Chase, he leaves a cryptic letter. And it goes on to say he exposes a secret society, an ancient international legion devoted to Stonehenge. I've got no idea how good this will be. I was fascinated by the premise and the cover. I don't know what it's like. If anyone's read this, do let me know. But just as a sideline, as I say, I've always loved stone circles and things like that. And so has my brother. My brother happens to be one half of the Prehistory Guys, who do lots of YouTube videos about stone circles and standing stones and all things prehistory. They're also on Patreon, and they also do live streaming where you can join in discussions. And they're not dry at all. They do it with great humour, but also huge intelligence and knowledge. So if you're interested at all in ancient standing stones, not just in the UK, they recently went to Turkey to look at Göbekli Tepe, and they're producing a film. They've produced a film a few years ago called Standing with Stones. So they are really, really good. So there's just a little plug for my brother's YouTube channel, The Prehistory Guys. So, okay, back to the books. Next on my list is One Day by David Nicholls. I have not read David Nicholls before. Also, I believe this was made into a film. I don't think I've seen the film. But David Nicholls was an actor, and then he also has written for television. The premise of this book: you can live your whole life not realising that what you're looking for is right in front of you. In 1988, Emma and Dexter meet on the night of their graduation. Tomorrow they must go their separate ways. So where will they be on this day next year and every year that follows? Interesting. It covers 20 years and these two people and what they do. And it's got some very good reviews. Jonathan Coe writes, "You really do put the book down with the hallucinatory feeling that they've become as well known to you as your closest friends." So I like that. I like books where you really, really become involved with the characters. And it's a #1 bestseller, published in 2010. I'll be interested to know how many of you have read this, or if you've seen the film. Do let me know. My next book is by a writer who I've read quite a lot of before. I haven't read any of her books for some time. This is A Question of Trust, and it's by Penny Vincenzi. I wouldn't normally have picked up these books, but again, they were books that my mother bought many years ago, and I just sort of followed behind and read them after she read them, and I absolutely loved them. And they are really, really, really good page turners. Very, very difficult to put down. Sadly, she died in 2018, so I think this was published in 2017, so this must be her last book, sadly. And I hadn't read this one. I was at my brother's house a few weeks ago, and I noticed that my sister-in-law was reading this, and I said, "Oh, she's a good writer," and she said, "Oh, well, I'll lend it to you," and I finished it. So that's how I've got this. So if you haven't read Penny Vincenzi before, she writes they are kind of glamorous blockbusters, I suppose you would call them. Yeah, Sunday Mirror says the queen of the posh blockbuster returns with another chunky decade-spanning saga. If you like that kind of thing, as I say, it's not normally the type of book I pick up, but they are just really, really good reads. Charismatic Tom Nelston is a man of principle and a man who wants it all: a political career, family, and a country that gives everyone a fair chance. His wife Alice has always been there at his side. It seems they are the perfect match. But when Tom meets the glamorous fashion model Diana Southcott, he finds her irresistible and embarks on an affair that is dangerous to them both. Glamorous, escapist, and gloriously enjoyable. Yeah, so and they are huge books. I mean, this is, for Penny Vincenzi, is quite short. Some of her books, sort of almost twice that size. But you read them really quickly because they really are a good read. So if you want to venture into the sort of glamorous, sexy world of illicit affairs, etc., then Penny Vincenzi is definitely your woman to read. Right, I've got a glass of water now. Next one is About a Boy by Nick Hornby. Now, I loved the film with Hugh Grant, and this is a Nick Hornby that I haven't read, so I'm really looking forward to reading this. It's always fun to watch a book after you've seen the film somehow. If you haven't seen the film, the story is about Will. He's 36, but he's a complete child. It's very interesting because the title is About a Boy, and you think it's obviously about the young boy that he gradually sort of befriends, but it's actually about him too, because he is an adult child. He has numerous affairs with women. He lies about his life. He's kind of pretty shallow. Then this 12-year-old boy, a child who gets bullied at school. He's a little bit strange, and he kind of appears in his life. And he looks after his mother, who suffers from depression, and Will kind of gradually gets pulled into their life, and it really changes him. It's a lovely story, and I always watch the film whenever it's on television, so I'm looking forward to reading the actual book. So Nick Hornby, yes, so he wrote High Fidelity and many other funny books, so I'm really looking forward to that. Next, another author I usually love, and it's Gentlemen and Players by Joanne Harris, who is famous for writing Chocolat. My favourite Joanne Harris book actually is The Lollipop Shoes, which is the kind of sequel to Chocolat. I've read several of her other books. Some I like more than others. I wasn't so keen on Blue-Eyed Boy, but yeah, she's a lovely writer who's very, very good at creating atmosphere, senses, you know, as you know, in Chocolat. I'm sure either if you've read the book or seen the film or both. This one, Gentlemen and Players, it's set in a boys' grammar school in the north of England, and a new year has just begun. For the staff and boys of the school, a wind of unwelcome change is blowing. There goes the dog. Suits, paperwork and information technology rule the world, and Roy Straightley, Latin master, eccentric and veteran of St Oswald's, is finally, reluctantly contemplating retirement. But beneath the little rivalries, petty disputes and everyday crises of the school, a darker undercurrent stirs, and a bitter grudge, hidden and carefully nurtured for 13 years, is about to erupt. Washington Post says, constantly surprising and wickedly fun. A clever story of obsession and revenge. Sunday Telegraph. So that sounds really interesting. Published in 2005. So surprising. It's only just come into my radar. So let me know if you've read that one. There we go. Here is Tilly come to join us, having a biscuit. Next, here's an interesting title, The Dud Avocado by Elaine Dundee. I know absolutely nothing about this book. I think my niece bought this. My niece is really good at buying me novels she thinks I might find interesting. They're usually by writers I don't know. Hello. Yeah. The premise. Sally J. Gorse is a young woman hell-bent on living. It's the 1950s and she's an American in Paris. Witty, headstrong and disaster-prone, she dyes her hair pink and prowls the left bank in search of love, adventure and fame. Will our heroine be forced back to the States to fulfill her destiny as a librarian, or can she keep up her whirlwind Parisian existence? It sounds fun. Sunday Times says, as delightful and delicate an examination of how it is to be 20 in love and in Paris as I've ever read. So, and the Observer says, a champagne cocktail, rich, invigorating and deceptively simple. It sounds fun. It sounds light and something lovely to read when maybe, you know, you're feeling a bit down. So maybe I could have added that to my earlier January book list. So anyone read this? I'm looking forward to reviewing it at some point. Next, I think this might be another of my mother's. It's Lovers and Newcomers by Rosie Thomas. I have read Rosie Thomas before, some time ago. Can friendships forged decades ago survive one wild year under the same roof? Miranda Meadow decides a solitary existence in her crumbling country house is not for her. Reviving a university dream, she invites 5 of her oldest friends to join her to live, and all have reasons to accept. It starts out well, they laugh, dance, drink and behave badly. But as old attractions resurface alongside new tensions, they discover that the clock can't be put back. When the outside world descends on their idyllic retreat and the isolation of the group is breached, the future that beckons is very different from the one they imagined. So, she says, a wonderful story that explores relationships, history and change. Okay, that sounds good. Looking forward to that one. Now, next, I picked this one up in a charity shop, and it was I was looking in the crime section because I hadn't read much crime recently, and I found this. It's actually a psychological thriller, and I'm rather partial to the occasional psychological thriller, my favourite being Douglas Kennedy. But this is Cadman Song by Peter Robinson. It's got quite a sort of dark cover. On a balmy June night, Kirsten, a university student, is strolling home through a silent moonlit park. Suddenly, her tranquil mood is shattered as she is viciously attacked. She has no recollection, and in another part of England, Martha Brown arrives in Whitby, posing as an author doing research for a book, but her research is of a particularly macabre variety. Who is she hunting with such deadly determination, and why? Well, I wonder if that's got anything to do with the Dracula story, because of course Whitby is the famous setting for when Dracula arrives in England. So I don't know. I don't know anything about this. Anybody know anything about that? Well, be interesting to find out. It's having a little cuddle. There we go. You want to get down now? There we go. Now, can you believe that I have never read any Stephen King apart from The Dark Tower, which is basically a children's novel, but it's really scary, but I really enjoyed it. So last year when I was in a local book charity event, I picked up a Stephen King. It's not one I've not heard of. It's called Revival. In a small New England town in the early 60s, a shadow falls over a small boy playing with his toy soldiers. Jamie Morton looks up to see... Sorry, Tilly was sniffing my foot. Jamie Morton looks up to see a striking man, a new minister, Charles Jacobs. Soon they forge a deep bond based on their fascination with simple experiments in electricity. Decades later, Jamie is living a nomadic lifestyle of bar band rock and roll when he sees Jacobs again. Their meeting has profound consequences for both men. Their bond becomes a pact beyond even the devil's devising. And Jamie discovers that revival has many meanings. Sounds very chilling and disturbing, as only Stephen King can be. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward and kind of slightly nervous about reading that, because I know that, I mean, he's such a good writer, but I know, you know, they are very scary, and it's probably why I've been putting off reading him, because I'm a big coward. And here's another rather dark looking book and a dark title, Plagueland by S.D. Sykes. It's historical whodunit, basically, set in the 14th century at the time of the Black Death. You know, obviously a little bit dark and gloomy. I do like a bit of dark. So here we are, and S.D. Sykes is... Somebody calls him the medieval C.J. Sansom, and I do like, I've read C.J. Sansom, and he is also really, really good. He does whodunits set in Tudor times. This is much further back. Young Oswald... The post has arrived. Wasn't the post, it was a parcel. Now I'm out of breath going down and upstairs. Anywho, young Oswald de Lacy was never meant to be Lord of Summershill Manor, but with his father and brothers killed by the plague, he must return from the monastery and take charge of the estate. Immediately, Oswald is confronted with the vicious murder of a young woman, Alison Starvecrow. It's an interesting name. The village priest claims it is the work of demonic, dog-headed men. Oswald knows this is nonsense, but to prove it, he must find the real killer. In a maze of political intrigue, family secrets and violent strife, and then the body of another girl is found. Wow. Yep, that sounds good. The New York Times says, "It's no fun reading a medieval mystery if it isn't steeped in filth, squalor and pestilence." S.D. Sykes serves it all up in vivid detail. I should look forward to that. There you go. I'd be interested to know if anyone has read any of these. They sound pretty good. Now, here's a writer with some interesting television credits to his name, Anthony Horowitz, and this book is called The House of Silk, and it's the new Sherlock Holmes novel. Now, Anthony Horowitz is responsible for creating Midsummer Murders, Foyle's War, which Mum and I absolutely loved, and Poirot, or some of the Poirot, I'm not sure of all of them, but a lot of the Poirot and others. And he's written quite a lot of children's books. And he claims Arthur Conan Doyle to be a huge inspiration. So this is a fresh take on the Sherlock Holmes tales. And I picked this up and I thought, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I love Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is one of those books I love to listen to in audiobooks, often at night. For some reason, they're just sort of really nice to listen to. So here we are, the game's afoot. It is November 1890 and London is gripped by a merciless winter. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson are enjoying tea by the fire when an agitated gentleman arrives unannounced at 221B Baker Street. He begs Holmes for help, telling the unnerving story of a scar-faced man with piercing eyes who has stalked him in recent weeks. Holmes and Watson find themselves swiftly drawn into a series of puzzling and sinister events stretching from the gaslit streets of London to the teeming criminal underworld of Boston and the mysterious House of Silk. I am really looking forward to that. The Times says Horowitz has captured Holmes' heaven. Perfectly paced, entirely unpredictable, edge of seat, exciting and a total joy from start to finish. Yes. Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait for that one. And this next book is one I picked up last year in a charity shop when I was on holiday in Derbyshire. I did a little video about that, if you remember, if some of you might remember. And it's called The Conjurers Bird, and it's by Martin Davies. It's a historical novel. Renowned naturalist Joseph Banks is about to set sail with Captain Cook. Captain Cook. Not Captain Hook. Peter Pan in my head for some reason. Right. Renowned naturalist Joseph Banks is about to set sail with Captain Cook on a voyage of discovery to the other side of the world. He will encounter many wonders, but none as captivating as the elusive woman with green eyes who haunts the woods near his home. Oh, it's another dual timeline novel. 2 centuries later, John Fitzgerald stumbles on a portrait of a woman with curiously striking eyes. Who is she? Fitz has lost too much, the convictions of his youth, the belief that he would die a famous man, and Gabby, the love of his life. But out of the blue, a call from Gabby has brought all rushing back and plunged him into a mystery that at once repels and irresistibly intrigues him. See, I can see why I picked that up. That's right up my street, isn't it? In the Times, there's a pacey confection of history, mystery and romance. Sounds really good. So I don't know if any of you have come across this or this author, but for those of us who love our historical novels and dual timeline novels, that sounds really, really good. And lastly, here's one for next winter's reading. It's called Advent. It's by James Treadwell. And it's a fantasy. So it's about time I had a fantasy on this list, isn't it? I don't know much about James Treadwell. For centuries it has been locked away, lost beneath the sea, warded from earth, air, water, fire, scrying, thought and sight. Now magic is rising to the world once more. And a boy called Gavin, who thinks only that he is a city kid with parents who hate him and knows only that he sees things no one else will believe, is boarding a train alone to Cornwall. No one will be there to meet him. Intriguing. Doesn't say much else about it, but all the reviews, someone says echoes Philip Pullman, mesmerising fantasy, magical, brilliantly entrancing. This sounds really interesting. This epic debut tale, that's his first novel, so that's why I've never heard of him, wowed us with the concept of ancient magic returning to the modern world 500 years after its disappearance. The first in a trilogy. It's ambitious and echoes Philip Pullman. So if you like Philip Pullman, as I do, then that looks like a really good read, and I can't wait for that, but it's definitely a winter read, that one. That's it. I'm exhausted. I hope you're not exhausted. I hope you found that really interesting. And that's not even all the books I have lined up. So I really don't know whether I am, in fact, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to get through all the books on my TBR shelves in 1 year. But those are some of the books that are in my shelves I am really looking forward to reading. It's good, isn't it? I've got myself quite excited now about all the books I've got lined up to read. It's eclectic, I know. I mean, I go into charity shops and I just pick up books that look intriguing, often have either historical or magical elements, crime novels, and the occasional sort of women's fiction type. Not a lot of those, but occasionally, if they're well written. So there you go. I hope that's given you some ideas too for the coming year. And if you've read any of these, don't give me any spoilers, please. But if you have read any of these, then do let me know if I'm in for a treat or even if I'm not. I'm always interested to hear your opinions. So there we go. Gosh, this has been a long video. Hope you're still with me. Thank you if you are. And if this is the first video you've seen of mine, then they're not all this long. But I do hope you'll subscribe, and I look forward to hearing from you in my next videos of book lists, book reviews, and all things bookish. And I will see you again soon. Bye for now.